So last week you saw the equation of a circle. Just to remind you, the equation looks like this up here. We're going to just practice identifying the center and the radius. Since the equation has a minus h, you're going to change the sign. So we'll make that a positive 3. We're also going to change the sign here because it was a negative k. That is the center of your circle. Since the equation has an r squared off to the right, we're going to take the square root of 25 to find that the radius is a 5. Second example, change the sign, take the square root. Last example, since there is no number here, it is a 0. Change the sign, take the square root. And so if equations are in this form, it's really easy to graph. You graph the center, you count out the radius, you make your circle. Now the equation is going to be given to you, and it's not in that form, so we're going to convert it. So we're first going to move all the variables to one side and the constants to the opposite. So I'm going to leave these two on the left, but I'm going to rewrite it so that the x squared is first. Leave a little space. I'm going to move the y squared over because I want all the variables on one side, so I'm going to do that by adding to cancel. So that'll become a positive y squared minus the 2y. And then I'm going to leave the 64 since it was already off to the right. Step 2, we want to complete the square. So just remember that we would take the b value, we would divide by 2 and then square it. So I'm going to do my work off to the side. So I'm going to take the 8, divide by 2, and square it. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4 squared will give me 16. So I'm going to add 16 here. I'm going to do the same with the y's. I will take the b value, divide by 2, and square it. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. Squared would give us a, positive 1. So I'm going to add 1. Step 3, we are balancing the equation because right now we have added 16 and 1 to the left. I'm going to balance that by adding 16 and 1 to the right. Our last step is that we're going to write it in factored form. So remember that in the middle, this number here was what we would get when we wrote it in factored form. So I'm going to take the x. I had a 4, so plus 4 squared, which means x plus 4 times x plus 4 is going to give me all of this. For the y's, I'm going to do the same. Y, we had a negative 1, so minus 1 squared. And then we're adding everything on the right just to simplify. And now we can identify the center and the radius. So I will change the sign over here, and to find the radius, again, take the square root. And I want to point out that you could write the equation as we had it with the 81, or as some of them would have shown, they like to put the radius squared, so I'm going to, So either x plus 4 quantity squared plus y minus 1 quantity squared equals 9 squared, or the 81 that we had previously. One more quick example. Step 1 was to move every variable to one side, so I'm going to keep the 100 x squared. I'm going to just move that over to join it. No change in sign because it's staying on the same side of the equation. I'll leave space. I'm going to put the 100 y squared here with that 240, and we will move the constant to the opposite side by adding 56. This one's a little different because you notice that there's a 100 in the leading coefficients. And so when we were completing the square, your first step would have been to divide by that, and that's what we're going to do here. So we're going to divide all the variables by 100. That'll give us x squared minus x. Again, we're leaving space because we're going to complete that square. We have a y squared. I understand you're going to have a decimal. That's okay. And we will also have a decimal here. Next up, we're going to complete the square. So if we take -1, divide by 2 and square it, I've done the work. Over here, we're going to add 0.25 and 1.44. And then to balance it, we will add 0.25 and 1.44 on the right. And then we're going to write this in factored form. So to write in factored form, remember that we're going to take this value in here, -0.5 on this one, and 1.2. And then on the right, we're just adding all of these together. And if we want to write it with the radius squared, the square root of 2.25 is 1.5, so I'll write that as 1.5 squared. And again, changing the sign, this will be +0.5, -1.2 for the center, and then a radius of 1.5.